Good morning, students. Once again, we are back to the same little match girl. So we'll have the part two, that is the eighth paragraph onwards, isn't it? The seventh paragraph we had stopped. That is the girl striking the first match. Now, in the continuation of the lesson, the little match girl, we come across the beautiful visions that the little girl gets while striking each matches. These visions may be seen as her hallucinations while sitting outside in an utterly distressed condition in a snowy wintry night. As her first vision, we already saw a great iron stove with brass knobs and brass ornaments. She even stretched her feet to take the warmth from the beautiful flame of the stove. She says that it gave out such a lovely warmth. The child had already stretched her feet to warm them when out went the flame and everything else vanished. Now, in the next paragraph, we read that is on page 89 of your treasure trove. She struck another, it burned clearly, and where the light fell upon the wall, the bricks became transparent like gauze. Gauze, you must have seen, it is a bleached cotton fabric which we use in the hospitals, and also it became transparent like gauze. She could see right into the room where a shining white cloth was spread on the table. It was covered with beautiful china. China here is meaning the crockery items, the cutlery, okay? And in the center, it stood a roast goose stuffed with prunes and apples. What do you mean by prunes, children? Prunes is meant here is plums. You must have seen the plums, okay? Prunes here meant is plum. Plums and apples steaming deliciously. And what was even more wonderful was that the goose hopped down, started jumping from one place to the another, from the dish, waddled across the floor. What do you mean by waddled? Waddled means walk with a short step. Waddled across the floor with the carving knife and fork in its back, waddled straight up to the poor child. Then out went the match, and nothing could be seen but the thick, cold wall. So, what happened, children? When she struck the second match, what did she see? She could see the wall next to her became so transparent, and within the room, she saw a shining white cloth spread on the table. It was covered with beautiful china cutlery, okay, the cutlery, and in the center of it stood a roast goose stuffed with the plums and apples, steaming deliciously. Now, see the beauty, the way he has written. The poor girl is hungry. Okay, she wants something to fill her stomach. It is then she gets this vision, and the goose hops down from the dish with the knife and fork on its back and waddles straight up to the poor child. Now imagine the poor girl's situation. She is in need of something to fill her stomach, and what does the visions give her? A kind of satisfaction of the roast goose ready to be consumed. And it comes to her, you eat me, isn't it? Beautiful, beautiful. Now, now what happens while striking the next? She struck another match, and suddenly she was sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree. It was much larger. It was much larger and much lovelier than the one she had seen last year through the glass doors of the rich merchant's house. A thousand candles lit up the green branches, and gaily colored balls like those in the shop windows looked down upon her. The little girl reached forward with both hands. Then out went the match. The many candles on the Christmas tree rose higher and higher through the air, and she saw that they had now turned into bright stars. One of them fell, striking the sky with light. Now we saw with the second one, the greater irony was to a hungry child the vision of a roasted goose. Now, what is the next? What was the setting of the story? It was a New Year Eve. You know, during the Christmas, how the houses used to be decorated with the Christmas trees and candles, stars, and balls. And it used to continue until New Year. And now the girl gets the vision of a beautiful Christmas tree. On striking the third match, what does she find? She finds herself sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree. She says it's much lovelier than the one she had seen last year. It's remember, it's not in her house, but she saw it through the glass door of the rich merchant's house. The many candles on the Christmas tree rose higher and higher through the air, and she saw that they had now turned into bright stars. Now, what do you mean by this Christmas tree, children? Christmas tree, it's the evergreen Christmas tree is a sign of undying life, rebirth, and stamina needed to enter during the winter months. So, Christmas tree has its own symbolic meaning. What does a symbolic meaning? It is undying stamina. Okay, it is undying life. It also speaks of rebirth. Okay, so it is also showing about the stamina, the energy one needed to enter during the winter time. The symbolism used by Anderson here is so meaningful, isn't it? With the reference to the little match girl here, what is she hoping for? Okay, she wants stamina, the strength to withstand the cold, the frozen situation in which she is. And so she is given the vision of a Christmas tree with lighted candles. And what is she seeing? Among the bright stars, one of them fell, streaking the sky with light. Now, see, children, the falling star here is referred to in the story by the little girl as the symbol of a soul reaching to God, ascending to God, okay, going to God. There is also some traditional belief, okay, if we look into some of the traditional beliefs, we see the people believed on it is a kind of superstition of falling stars. Souls going from purgatory to heaven is referred to in this narration, okay. And if a person made a wish during when he sees this falling star, a wish three times before the star disappeared, his wish would be, it would come true. So this magical moment is abruptly marked by the strong irony when the poor little girl remarks, "Now someone is dying." Look at the in the next lines. "Now someone is dying," said the little girl, "for her old grandmother, the only one who had ever been good to her, but who was now dead, had said, 'Whenever a star falls, a soul goes up.'" So she is reminded of the words of her grandmother who said, "Whenever you see the falling stars, you remember someone is ascending to God. Some souls are going back to God from the purgatory." So, the girl is remembering the words of her grandmother, and towards the end of the story, we come to know it is none other than but the little girl herself is going to heaven. The falling stars is a kind of for foreseeing of the death of the little poor girl. Now, coming down here, she struck another match on the wall. Once more, there was light, and in the glow stood her old grandmother, oh, so bright and shining, and looking so gentle, kind, and loving. "Granny," cried the little girl, "oh, take me with you. I know you will disappear when the match is burned out. You will vanish like the warm stuff and the lovely roast goose and the great glorious Christmas tree. Then she quickly struck all the rest of the matches she had in the pocket, for she did so want to keep her grandmother with her. Now, what happens? On striking the fourth match, the girl saw grandmother appears. The girl's grandmother appears in front of her. She is so delighted to have her gentle granny, the only person who loved her. And now she pleads to her grandmother to take her also to heaven, depicting her desire to be with one true relative and God to save her from her suffering, the suffering in her world, in this world. She expresses her fear that her granny also will leave her, will disappear like the other visions. And now, what does she do? For fear of leaving her granny like the other visions, she burns all the other matches so that the vision of her grandmother remain with her. The memory of her grandmother's love helped her to keep warm for some time. Notice that she burns all the matches to keep her grandmother. She hasn't done this earlier in order to keep any of the previous sites, neither for warmth nor for food. She did not match her. She did not burn her matches. Now she burns up all her matchsticks because what she craves for the most is love, care, compassion, as is embodied by her dear granny. The matchsticks represent a symbol of hope and her desperate will to live. The little girl stays alive as long as the little fire of hope is burning, and she dies when all her matches are extinguished. Now, what happens? In the next lines, we find the matches flared up. Flared up means illuminated with such a blaze that it was brighter than broad daylight. And her old grandmother had never seemed so beautiful and so stately before. So, stately means so dignified. So dignified before. She took the little girl in her arms and flew with her high up, oh, so high towards glory and joy. Now they knew neither cold nor hunger, nor fear, for they were both with God. So that's the climax of the story, where the little girl is not left by her grandmother, but she is also taken to heaven with her grandmother. So the what is that? The meaning of the falling star and the saying of her grandmother is fulfilled in her life. Her own grandmother comes to take her back to heaven. So beautiful ending, isn't it? The climax of the story is so beautiful. It's not a tragic end for the little girl, but for the world outside. What do they see? The frozen body lying on the road. Okay, but for her, it was a reunion with her grandmother as well as with the God. Now, how does the public outside, who had been so very indifferent to her even when she was alive, how do they look at the story? Okay, but in the cold dawn, in the corner formed by the two houses, sat the little girl with rosy cheeks and smiling lips. That shows her death was something very glorious. Okay, so she is with the rosy cheeks and smiling lips, dead, frozen to death on the last evening of the old year. The dawn of the new year rose on the huddled figure of the girl. She was still holding the matches, and half a packet had been burned. She was evidently trying to warm herself. People said, what was the reasonable saying of the people outside? They said she was evidently trying to warm herself because half of the matches were already burned, the half were left back in her pocket. But no one knew what beautiful visions she had seen, and in what a blaze of glory she had entered with her dear old grandmother into the heavenly joy and gladness of a new year. So we come to know the girl is frozen to death by the time the rays of the New Year's dawn reaches the little body of the unfortunate child. That is what the people have to say about her life. The neighbors had to say only that. Okay, what was their comment? She was evidently trying to warm herself. This is the scathing comment by the author Anderson on the cold, rationalizing, matter of fact attitude of the people outside, who look without seeing, for they see what lies in front of them, but they are blind to what lies within. The idle spectators are not only rude, their cold, rationalizing attempt is trying to explain away the death of the little girl is also it's completely fallacious. The last sentence of the story unmarks the petty mindset of the people, okay, the so called people. The empathetic portrayal of girl's plight, the physical and emotional abuse she has to go through, her unfortunate and possibly unavoidable death, and the utter apathy with which her death is received by the people, that it transforms this fairy tale by Anderson to an effective social moral story. So, hope you understood the story, hope you liked the story, the moral of it, isn't it, children? Beautiful story with lots of learning from it. Now, if we analyze the story from the beginning, let us see how Anderson has used some of the figures of speech. Okay, how beautifully he has used the symbolism and the imageries, visual imagery, and the other tactile imageries. So we will have a quick look into these important things. We will just analyze the story with those rhetorical devices used by the author. Now, the story opens on a somber note with the setting of the weather or nature complementing the mood of the story. This is known as pathetic fallacy in literature. We see the use of this literary device right at the beginning of the story. Pay attention to the words in bold. Okay, the word here is it was bitterly cold. Okay, snow was falling and the darkness was gathering, for it was last evening of the old year. Now, for the last evening, the last day for the little girl. Bitterly cold is also showing the bitterness experienced by the character, the protagonist, the little girl. Now, coming down. In other words, the year is drawing to its end. It is dying. This must be kept in mind while analyzing the death of the little match girl. The death of the day also heralds the death of the year. This description of the setting in the first line of the story foreshadows the death of the little girl. So here what Anderson uses, the literary device used by him is pathetic fallacy. Now, coming down the visual image, a brilliant visual imagery is used to describe the suffering of the poor little girl whose feet are red and blue with cold and who creeps along shivering with cold and hunger and has become a picture of misery. So here Anderson wrote a lot on child abuse, which had become a social problem by, and the issue is also dealt with in other stories written by him. The girl is scared to go home as she's failed to sell the matches, and she knows that she will be surely beaten by her father. The certainty, the certainty about her fear is of great importance, as it reveals that getting beaten by her father is a recurrent part of her childhood. We are also given to understand the poverty under which she lives when we are told that it was a mere shack through which the wind whistled incessantly and was barely a safe shelter. The girl decides to huddle in a corner formed by two houses. She takes out a match and strikes it. Scratch! An effective use of onomatopoeia. You know, onomatopoeia is the how the sound is related to the meaning of the words used. Okay. Now, what follows next is Anderson's pure genius, where he pits imagination versus reality. The things imagined by the girl in order to escape her harsh reality is very moving one. One can also understand the link between imagination, reality, and memory, partly by analyzing the sights she sees while lighting up the matches. She imagines a great iron stove with the silver brass knobs and burning. The reality of the terrible cold makes her imagine a source of warmth, that is the burning stove. Now, similarly, on lighting the second one, what does she see? She sees the sight of a roasted goose, a source of food which might satiate her hunger. She was she was hungry because the whole day she was walking on the street selling the matches, and not a penny she could get till the last moment. And you know, she was hungry, nobody fed her. What we see is that her imagination helps her conjure sights which may at least theoretically satisfy her the immediate needs, her necessities, in order to combat the harsh reality in which she is. Now, on striking the third match, what does she see? She sees her sitting under a beautiful Christmas tree and says it is much lovelier than one she had seen last year. This vision by the little girl shows the link between imagination, memory, and desire. It also tells us how she had seen a lovely Christmas tree last year. Memory, isn't it? Last year. The memory produces a kind of desire in the form of much lovelier Christmas tree. The many candles on Christmas tree rose higher and higher through the air, and she saw that they had now turned into bright stars. One of them fell, streaking the sky with light. The magical moment is abruptly marked by strong irony when the girl remarks, "Now someone is dying." Notice that she burns all the matches now to keep her grandmother. She hasn't done this earlier in order to keep any of the previous sites. The matchsticks represent the symbol of hope and her desperate will to live. The girl stays alive as long as the little fire of hope is burning, and she dies when all her matches are extinguished. Now, students, so this empathetic portrayal of the girl's plight, the physical and emotional abuses she has to undergo, her unfortunate and possibly avoidable death, and her utter apathy with which her death is received by the people, all these transform this tale an effective social commentary. So this is all about the story of the little match girl. Now get back to your workbook, go through the reference to context given, the commentaries given, the title, explanation of the title, and what more. Get to through your question answers. Try to find out the answers as much possible. I will also help you out now for today and tomorrow. Get to through the book as much as possible, find out the answers, and let's see how we can go in helping you to give the question answers. Okay, so for now, bye, take care, God bless.